This is a tutorial of the vessel anastomosis trainer developed by the Thoracic Surgery Directors Association in conjunction with the Chamberlain Group. This is a portable vessel anastomosis trainer that's intended to fit into your lab coat pocket. And let me go through the setup and the components of this device. First of all, there are two side arms, and you'll see that the metal arms on these are of two different lengths, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I'll put that over here. Also, there's a lid, and we can slide this off, revealing three compartments. You'll see that the first compartment is for the grafts. The second compartment is the working port, and the third compartment houses the graft holder, which has an incorporated alligator clip. The instruments we'll need for this exercise are the Castroviejo needle driver, forceps, scalpel blade, Metzenbaum scissors, hemostat, iris scissors, and a hole punch. Also, we'll be using for this exercise 6/0 polypropylene suture. Let me review what these side arms are for. Typically, what we'll start with is to do the anastomosis without the side arm. And as you progress in the use of this trainer, you put the side arm, the short one, the short metal arms, to increase the degree of difficulty in terms of working down in the cavity. And then as you progress in the use of this trainer, you can use the longer side arm, which will then create even a greater degree of difficulty in terms of working in the cavity. For the purpose of this exercise, we will perform the anastomosis without the use of the side arm for easier visualization. So what we'll do is we'll start out with the working port. These prongs vary from 2 to 4 millimeters, and they are interchangeable. You'll see that we'll start out with a 3 millimeter prong, take the target vessel, and attach this to the prongs for our target vessel part of the anastomosis. There's a foam stabilizer which one can slide back and forth depending on the area of interest, and that allows you to stabilize the graft during the anastomosis. What we'll start out with is a small arteriotomy. And then using the 4 millimeter hole punch, place that inside and punch a nice little arteriotomy. The reason for this is in order to facilitate the anastomosis, it is ideal to have the arteriotomy slightly open. What I'll do is I'll take a 3 millimeter graft. You'll see that there's a slight difference between the target vessel and the graft vessel. This is slightly lighter in color, and this is slightly more tan. You'll see that this has a little more thickness, a little more structural integrity, and the graft here is a little more pliable. The first thing is to create a slight bevel on the graft, and this will match our arteriotomy. Place the graft holder and bend the alligator forceps clamp down so as to provide adequate stabilization. Using 6/0 polypropylene suture, we're going to perform the anastomosis. In order to demonstrate the anastomosis, what I'm going to do is rotate the trainer so that you can see the anastomosis. And what I'll do is I'll put the vessel holder on this side to stabilize the graft vessel. Taking the 6/0 polypropylene suture, perform the anastomosis. Again, the anastomosis is the endoside. And what I'll do is I'll start, suture outside in, one from the heel, and come in with a backhand, pick the graft up, This is the heel of the anastomosis. Third or fourth stitch, what I do is I bring the graft down and then perform the anastomosis as a single bite. Part of the challenge is to maintain some degree of suture management to keep the suture from becoming entangled. Switch over the back end stitch from here at the apex. At this point in the anastomosis, I like to release the graft vessel and move it over slightly to my side, again to provide good exposure on the other side of the anastomosis. And what I'll do this as backhand sutures. What that does is that completes the anastomosis. What I'll do now is take the graft holder and just have a little traction on the graft. So I go ahead and tie the suture. That completes the anastomosis. Cut the graft vessel just slightly above the anastomosis and inspect the anastomosis. I like to do it on a slight bevel so as to prepare the graft vessel for the next anastomosis. As you can see, I'm going to tilt this over slightly, that the anastomosis is widely patent. At this point, what one can do is to perform another anastomosis. Make a small cut at this point, small arteriotomy, again with a knife, and then followed by a 4mm hole punch as done before. As you can see, we could do a series of anastomosis along the course of the graft, and then after completion of the anastomosis on one side of the graft, we could do another series of anastomosis on the back. This is so that we could optimize the use of the graft vessel and the target vessel. So at this point, after completion of the exercise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the trainer, that is to put the lid back on the trainer and to package it up again for portability. So the first thing is to replace all the components back into the compartment, slide the lid back on, and then to attach the arms the side of the trainer. As you can see, there are two sets of holes for the metal components to slide into. What I'll do is I'll use the top one for the shorter arm, and then correspondingly the lower one for the longer arm. And these are in turn attached to the apparatus with Velcro tabs. So as you can see, the vessel anastomosis trainer provides a portable simulator for one to practice vascular anastomosis. So that concludes the tutorial for the TSDA vessel anastomosis trainer. Along with the vessel anastomosis trainer, we've attached the assessment form for vascular anastomosis. The assessment tool is made up of 13 components of vessel anastomosis. What I want to do is go through this with you and discuss the rating scale for measuring the performance of the anastomosis. As noted, there are 13 components to this, the first of which is arteriotomy. Arteriotomy is assessed on a 5-point Likert scale, with 1 being poor and 5 being excellent. For instance, for a score of 1, the anchoring points include not identifying the artery, off midline, multiple tracts, injury to the back wall, a marked irregular edge. The score of 3 is intermediate, and a score of 5 is excellent. The anchoring points for a score of 5 are as follows: full artery exposure, consistent midline, thin single tract, no injury to the back wall, and a smooth edge. The other components include graft orientation. Again, for a score of 1, the anchoring points are unable to orient, not know the start point, not know the end point, or marked hesitation. For a 5, it's proper heel-toe orientation, consistent start, know the end point, and no hesitation. The third component is suture bite, again on a 1 to 5 scale with the corresponding anchoring points. The fourth one is suture spacing. The fifth component is needle holder use, which is very important in terms of understanding how a Castro Viejo operates and whether or not there is adequate rotation of the needle driver during the anastomosis. The sixth component is use of forceps. The seventh one is needle angle, which is critical in order to compensate for the varying depth of the anastomosis. Let me spend a little bit of time with needle angles. For a score of 1 is not aware of angles, not compensate for depth, and does not consider subsequent angles. For a score of 5 for needle angles include consistent correct angles, compensate for depth, consistent adjustment for subsequent angles. The eighth component is needle transfer. Ninth component is suture management, followed by knot tying, hand mechanics, use of both hands, and finally economy and time of motion. As you can see, the intent of an assessment tool is to provide specific formative feedback to help improve your vascular anastomosis skills. Also included in the form is a summative assessment for overall pass or fail. But as noted, the intent of this is to assist you with identifying areas of anastomosis and specific aspects of anastomosis that could be improved. So this is incorporated along with your vessel anastomosis trainer, and with some practice, this could become a very useful tool. Not only is this used in the laboratory, it could also be used in assessment of intraoperative performance. This concludes the summary of the assessment tool used for vessel anastomosis.